the JBR Podcast.
Wake up and check it out.
Where music and life connects. Let's go.
Yeah. Now that you finally got your shit together.
Me. Yeah, I got my shit together. Sure. All right. So just so you know, my old man's home, so he may be.
That's all right.
Back. Okay. I also realized I had to switch coffee mugs because mine's inappropriate.
There's nothing. That's fine. What is it? Let's see it. What I can't see. The screen is like so small. Don't be what does it say? Don't be a cuntosaurus. That's good. I like that. This video will be flagged for not viewable for children.
That's why I changed it. Just in case.
It's all good.
Just in case. All right. Shall we jump in?
Okay, so what's happening here? Normally, I'm bringing people on and asking them all about themselves, and now you're going to ask me all about myself. So
I am.
I know. And you seem a little excited about that.
I've been, okay. Yeah. I'm going to talk over you because I have a squirrel.
That's okay.
So, a little bit of backstory here. I just got into the live music scene last summer. I confirmed that with Linda like an hour ago.
Really?
Seriously. Which is why I don't know anybody or who anybody is and why your series has been so informational for me. Because I see faces at the shows and at the jams and I'm like, music enthusiasts. No idea who they are. So for you and I, just to let your listeners, watchers know, I first saw you at Live Music Wednesday at the Haney. You and Darren sitting on chairs or stools, playing your guitars, playing off each other. And it was nice. It was nice. But then the next time you played there, it was when she had switched from duos to trios. And so it was James Buddy Rogers. And blew my mind because the sound was so different than what it was with just the duo. And that's when I fell in love with your music, your style, and started following you everywhere. Maybe you noticed. So then we became Facebook friends after meeting a few times and you realizing I'm really not a stalker. And you had posted some marketing that drove traffic to your website. And I thought, oh, James has a website. What's this about? Oh, he's got like 5 albums. That's cool. What's this awards thing? Scroll. Do you remember me messaging you and going, you're like a somebody? So anyways, then I bought your albums. And as I'm listening to them, like I said, new into the music scene, it kind of got my squirrel curious and thinking things. And so I started writing down questions. So when you talked to me about that you were thinking of doing this series, when you first talked to me at Anavet's about it, I thought boy, I wish I could interview him. Then when I got enough questions, I approached you and said, hey, would you be open to this? And now you're humoring me.
Yeah, well, it was funny that you brought that up and said, hey, somebody should interview you, because I've heard it a few times. I get out and I talk to these people, and a bunch of them are people I've known over the years and whatnot. And I don't speak a lot because whoever I bring on, it's kind of, maybe like when I had Nigel Mack or Jack Lavin on, I've toured and played with those guys. So sometimes things I've done come through. But a few people have said, oh, you should interview yourself. And actually, Bill was a guy, he did the first episode, and you were like, I see Bill all the time. I had no idea he had those roots back to the 70s, 80s with helping a lot of those, famous bands get famous.
Yeah.
And he had said, you know, oh, because he's such a jokester. He goes, you should just like interview yourself and like dress up 2 different ways where you just, and I was like, oh no, man, that's way too much fucking work. I don't want to do that. Right. I want to work smarter, not harder. And then when you said, and you had a list of questions and showed me a few of them, I thought, perfect. Why not? Because that's exactly what the podcast is. You know, it's for people that enjoy music, and you can get behind the scenes music. It's not just about musicians that everybody knows all the time, because it makes it real for people. But I want to circle back when you said the first time you saw me was when I did the duo with Darren. And it's funny how that came about. So a good friend of mine, Gerald Charlie, you know, had some health issues, and we've known each other for decades. And he had called me, I guess, a couple summers ago and said, you know, come and play guitar with me. Because sometimes he had, you know, his health issues where he just couldn't solo, but he could sing. Right. So he said, you know, I kind of want you there, take some solos and maybe sing or whatever. I was backing him up, but I could front if he felt the need for me to do that. So I did, and he's Aboriginal, and we did a lot of the Two Rivers things. And Murray Porter, who's a Juno award-winning, you know, piano player, singer, he was out, and I was playing with Gerald, and then I hadn't seen Darren since probably the 90s, and I didn't clue in because I was like, man, that guy looks familiar, but he's playing drums, and I know Darren is a guitar player, singer. Then he came up and he was like, James, it's Darren, and I was like, fuck, no way, really? And then Gerald's health, you know, he kind of canceled some gigs because he wanted to take a break with his health. And there was an open slot, and it was like, well, who's going to fill it in? Darren and I were there. We're like, well, fuck, let's just jam some blues out, right? Like we did in the old days. And we did. And then next thing you know, it was like, we're playing a festival in Surrey, and they booked us at the P&E, and we got all these gigs out of it. And then we wound up at the Wednesdays there at the Haney for a couple shows, and then that petered out, and now he's off doing his thing again, and I'm doing mine. But yeah, it's just funny how those things kind of, right, you know, work out. And then we met from that, and I know Bambina, she's been doing a lot to help promote music too, which is great, because the scene is like died in Vancouver and moved to the burbs. And I feel like over the last year, well, since things came out of COVID, the scene in the Lower Mainland, like between what Cora does with the festival, or Blues Society, I should say, in Abbotsford, and some of the private events in the Dudney, and then the things going on in Maple Ridge, there's a pretty good little scene that's happening there. And lots of good music, and it is localized. So yeah, I can see how, you know, a lot of the players that play in that kind of stick to this region. They don't necessarily go national or international like I've done, you know, over the years. And next weekend I'm heading to Calgary for a couple shows, and that's kind of the stint of my
plug-in.
Yeah, well, you know, and somebody watching this in 3 months is going to go, didn't that place close down? But they've been closing down for 2 years now. Okay, yeah. So ask your questions. I don't really know what the questions are.
So how did you end up being predominantly blues?
I originally started off playing like 50s rock and roll. Really? And my dad kind of got me into music with his mom, my grandmother, who we call Lady J. She didn't like to be called grandma or nana or anything like that. And a lot of people thought in the early days it was like my parents that brought me out, but it was my dad and his mom, right? And she was pretty young for her age. So I started out playing like 50s Buddy Holly rock and roll kind of stuff, probably when I was 10. So that would have been, or 11, 86, 87. So I'm aging myself here. And then my dad brought home. So when I originally started playing guitar, he took me to, and I'm going to call him out. I'm going to say I went to Coquitlam Music Store, and it was at like Shaughnessy and Lougheed is where it was. Okay. And I'd gone in there, and I took lessons for a period of time. And, you know, I'm not like, I'm a visual learner. Okay. And everything I do musically, like I'm not book smart in that sense. I'm street smart. Mm-hmm. And the guitar teacher legit told my dad, and this was probably when I was 9, said, your son should take up piano or soccer because he does not have the dexterity to ever be a guitar player. Will not be a guitar player. It's terrible. But at the time, I was playing these, like, you know, On Top of Old Smoky, like out of, like, you know, Every Good Boy Deserves Fudge notes. And I was just fucking bored to death. Like, I
Right.
hated it. And then when I was 10, we went on this family trip down to California, and we went to Tijuana, and I met this Mexican kid that was playing flamenco guitar. I thought that's the coolest thing, right? And between him and getting my picture taken with a donkey that was painted like a zebra are like the only two things I remember about that trip, right? Because I was so young. And I came back, and my dad was like, he had bought my sister a guitar, and it was like this old 73 Tele Deluxe. It was like a real guitar.
Right.
And then he was kind of like, oh, well, nobody's playing it. What a waste of money. So my grandparents lived in Burnaby, my dad's parents.
Mhm.
And well, my grandfather passed years before this. And then there was a music store there. So went to the music store, and the guy actually that Brian that owned the music store is actually the guitar player with oh my God, why his name should not throw me right now. It
Edit this part out.
Oliver Conway. Yeah, edit this part. No, Oliver. There's just so many things going in my head right now. Oliver Conway, like Oliver in the Elements. Like, and he's been out to John Hawley's thing.
Oh,
You probably
okay.
great player and singer. So he plays with him. So it's like I still know him to this day, and I always wondered, you know, what he was doing. So he owned this music store on Hastings Street. I went in there, and this guy John was the guitar teacher that he's like, so what do you want to learn? And I was like, you know, I want to learn, you know, Beastie Boys and Guns N' Roses,
Right.
because at that time, that's kind of what was going on. And he was like, okay, you got a cassette, bring a cassette tape in. And we literally burnt out a cassette tape, and he would write this what they called tablature. So he would like had this little stamp that looked like a guitar and 6 strings, and he would just draw little dots on it and write a 3 if that was the 3rd fret. And so when I'd go home, I'd look at the book and go, okay, that's where my finger goes. And there was no like technical thing to it. It was just like, hey, however you can make it work, is if it sounds good, you did it right.
Right on.
It's not like you have to hold your hand this way or that way. So
Right.
I resonated with that. And then it got to a point where after a few months, you know, I'd go and I would learn like 1/3 of the solo in the lesson, and he would say, go practice that and then come back and we'll learn the rest of the solo. And by the time we would come back the next week, I'd have the whole solo figured out, and let's work on another song. And then after a year with him, he told my dad, he's like, you should like stop wasting your money. Like, he's just figuring it out on his own now. Like, he's just coming here to
He
hang
taught
out.
you how to figure it out on your own.
Exactly, which ultimately kind of in a way was just putting himself out of business. But that's what made him so great, because he was like, you don't need me anymore. You're putting in the effort. Just go do it. And then I started in a band, and it was more of a 50s, like Buddy Holly, Richie Valens. And I just almost stuff that like Darren does now with Ricky when they
That's
play
what
the
I was
stand-up.
thinking. Yeah.
Right. And then my dad was, you know, he would bring home like blues records, and he had brought this tape of Stevie Ray Vaughan, and he was coming to I think it was like the Orpheum or something he played, and I never got to see him. But there was a song on this album called Mary Had a Little Lamb. And I thought, that's cool. Like, they totally rocked this out. So I learned all the guitar, and then really got into like Stevie Ray Vaughan was like, oh, you know, and in those days when I started playing, it was like Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan. I was just obsessed with that music. And I'd wear these like Rayon shirts, right? And they were calling me like Jamie Rayon, right? Because I would like, you know, do like play all Stevie Ray Vaughan songs and stuff like this. And that's around the time I was getting dragged to the Yale Hotel, and I met Jack Lavin and started.
And how old were you then?
I was 13, and my dad had gone to, he had gone to the Liquor Control Board, and he had gotten this permit because he would take me to bars and they're like, whoa, 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 this little kid can't come in here. My dad was like, look at this, he's allowed. Right. And they were like,
That's
oh,
fantastic.
okay. You know, and a few of them called like the liquor board and was like, hey, like this guy's coming in here with his kid saying, and then word just got out that it was like, yeah, no big deal. So yeah, I started, you know, doing that, and I'd done acting in those days too. So I was
What?
working with, yeah, I played Peter Gordon in Stephen King's It in 1989.
Shut up.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't like acting because it was hurry up and wait. You'd sit in a trailer and I'm like, nah, you know, and then, you know, I'd go play a gig, and when I was working with Feldman, they had me opening up, you know, for some big rock bands, and it was like my name was bigger, or my age was bigger than my name on the poster. But I got to do, and I was like 14 for probably 10 years or something like that. You know?
Right. That's how that works.
Yeah. Yeah. But
So,
I got to do a lot of cool shows. So I just veered towards music, which was probably a mistake because there was no money in it compared to like acting.
yeah, but there's no money in the acting if you hate it and aren't going to do it well, right? So,
Well, I guess.
could have gone
But you know,
either
as a
way.
kid, I remember I was hanging out with what was his name? Seth Green. That's who it was. He was in, so we were hanging out, and then there was another girl that did a bunch of horror movie series things afterwards. And you know, when I saw that coming out, I was like, man, that could have been me. And here I am slugging it out for the same money guys were making in the 70s.
Yeah, fair enough. So you have 5 albums, correct?
Yes.
Where were you in your career when you released them?
Oh, my first album I think it was released 2001 or 2. So I had toured. So after I did like the Stephen King It and got into playing bars and being a little protege for, like, they were just propping me around as this, like, listen to this little kid, you know, then I quit for a while because I think I was about 17 or 18. I just got tired of it.
Mm.
I stopped playing, and then
Tired of the music or tired of being 14?
I just tired of the politics of it. I just wanted to play music. And you know, this is one thing that J-Dub and I talked on another one before. It's like, if you think you're going to play and it's all just going to be rainbows and butterflies in music, you're wrong, because 90% of it is like slugging out the business side of it. And as a kid, it was like overwhelming. I didn't want to have to, you know, deal with that. So I took a bit of a break. And earlier, before I took a break, I met Russell Jackson, and he had played with BB King from, I think, 78 or 79 until 86 or 87. And he had a kid and moved to Vancouver in 1990, 91. And I had met him, you know, again, as a kid, I was meeting everybody in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And we got along and played, and he really liked what I did. And a lot of the older guys were like, oh, young guy in the blues, like, let's help mature him into, you know, educating him. So when I learned the Stevie Ray Vaughan, Mary Had a Little Lamb, it was like, well, go look at who wrote that song, you know. And it's like, you start to learn about guys like Buddy Guy and BB King and Johnny Watson. And I just start to go backwards, and then realize the guy that I really idolized, the Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimmy Vaughan, they got it from all these other guys.
Mm.
You know, so you just start going down all these rabbit holes of sounds that, you know, you get caught up in. So I took a break, and then I ran into Russell in Coquitlam, of all places. He was driving, and I was like, Russell, we're like in our cars. He's like, pull over. And he's like, are you still playing? And I said, yeah, a little bit here and there. And he said, well, I need a guitar player. Like, come over to my place. It was a couple nights later, and he says, let's work on some tunes. So I went, and then he's like, do you want to join the band? And I said, sure. And I was like, well, I guess I went on the road with him at 19. And we were touring 10 months of the year, playing 6 nights a week, 7 nights a week.
Right.
And then with him, it was like a real education, because we're touring all over North America, and I'm playing shows with Elvin Bishop and Canned Heat and, you know, um, like just the list just goes on. Kenny Neal, we were opening for Fabulous Thunderbirds, and you name it. All these like legends that he had met and connections he did when he played with BB King, and it doesn't get much bigger than BB King.
Right.
So I just got this real big education, and I got to a point with him where it was like, I just need to move on and do something else. And by then it was 2000. I was like getting into my mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I got into a pool hall business with a friend, and then spent time on that and built my band. And then I released my album in 2002, which Tom Lavin helped me on. He had a studio. So I'd gone into the studio and he played on it, and I released that album. And then after that, I, just slugging out gigs and touring, and got into the next albums, and I guess the rest is history.
Do your albums have themes?
No, I guess not really themes. I guess they're just more like a moment in time. Like if any person just looks back and goes, here's what would the perception of you throughout the 80s be a theme compared to you in the 90s, compared to you in the first decade of 2000? You know what I mean?
So
like I would,
a reflection of where you were at that point in time.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay.
And you will notice that it wasn't until, what was it? My third album. The first two albums were James Rogers. My third album was James Buddy Rogers.
How did that happen?
I started that album so Tom Lavin and I worked outside of music business in business. He had a bunch of businesses, and I've done marketing and things, and, a bit of a computer geek that way. So we did a lot of work. I worked with him in his studio, and he had a private post-secondary school. So we worked in that arena, and we got to the point of, okay, I'd done two albums. I did one with Jack, and Tom kind of played on my first one, which I more or less produced. So he said, I'll produce one. We were in the studio probably 5-6 days a week working. We said, well, let's just get a bottle of, whiskey, and we'll do an album. And we started this album probably in early 2010. And it was kind of a part-time thing. And then my dad died in 2010. And, that kind of put things back. And then Tom was like, well, let's pick up on the album and let's finish things off. And, he wanted, my dad's name was Bud, is what everyone knew him.
Okay.
So Buddy, right? So he was like, let's do the James Buddy Rogers. And at first I was kind of like, I don't know. I'm not, but it was I thought he's the reason I got into music. And it's kind of a tribute to, he was there at like every gig. Like when I toured with Russell, he would take holidays. And then when he retired, he bought this like camper thing for his truck. And he literally drove from Vancouver to Texas and came and followed us around as we toured. He liked it so much, right? So it's kind of a tribute to kind of keep him in, and that kind of stuck. And it was like a name that people picked up on. And that's where, that came from. And I don't know how many people really know that, but yeah, that's the sentimental kind of thing behind it, right? Because it's not really my name.
Look at you, all sentimental and stuff. So what percentage of your songs on your albums are originals, are yours versus the covers?
The first album I did, I think it was 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
And then the album I did second, I'm going to pull it up on my website just so I'm.
Do you need permission to do those? Like to.
When you do a cover tune, yeah, you have to buy I think it's mechanical licensing or something for how many albums you're going to press, and that goes to the songwriters of those album or those songs and stuff. So yeah, my first album, Wanna Go Home, I was about 50-50. The Red Light Party album, between myself and Jack Lavin I'm pretty sure it was all original. Jack wrote some tunes. I wrote some tunes. We wrote some tunes together. Then my third album, which was the one Tom produced, was My Guitar's My Only Friend. That's the one that got the Juno nomination.
That's a
And a
great
bunch
album.
and a bunch of other award nominations and stuff. That one was yeah, I guess it's covered because of a lot of Powder Blues stuff. I covered a lot of Powder Blues tunes on there. We actually used some old bed tracks of the original hit songs from 2-inch tape in the 70s and 80s, and we put it. Bed tracks would be like the bass and drums. So if you listen to, I don't even know if I should be saying this, but whatever. It's been a decade since I did the album. No, and it was really cool. And it was a lot of it was Tom's idea because we were just in the studio and it was like, you got to bring guys in, you got to track them out. And we had been getting a lot of his stuff off of like his Powder Blues hits off of 2-inch tape and digitizing them because the tape doesn't last forever. And sometimes 2-inch tape will start to like bind together and then you got to throw it in an oven at certain temperatures and you can break it up and you get like one pass of sound. And if you don't record it, like that could be lost forever. Right. And they actually did. Ken Burke was an engineer. They did a bunch of Jeff Healey stuff after he passed too, to kind of get it digitized because he did a lot of recording at the studio. But we took some bass and drums from, like I think, Sweet Little Girl was a tune that Duras, the drummer, and Tom, I think, wrote. Don't quote me on that, but we took like the original musicians that recorded in the 70s, 80s. That we digitized it, and then it was like, okay, well, I don't want to sing it in that key, so we'll speed this up, and we'll, did some digital stuff to it, and then just gave myself this backing track to say, okay, well now I can just play my guitar and sing over top of it. It sounded like a whole new thing, but I didn't even have a bass player or drummer in the studio. We were just kind of,
that's totally cool.
Drinking single malt until 2 a.m. and, having a good time.
When you're writing a song, what comes to you first, the words or the tune?
Could be both. It just depends on
really
what happened. Yeah, sometimes I'll tinker around, or even playing live, a melody will come and then I'll try and remember it or record it on my phone or a little Zoom microphone or whatever I have. And then it might build a song around that, or might be around a subject. When's
the last time you wrote a song?
Oh, it's been years since I wrote a song. I just haven't, I don't know. Like I was playing lots and things were going good. And, and then when COVID hit, I was kind of like, I'm just going to retire. Like I don't need music anymore. COVID realized that, I don't need music to survive anymore. My entire life, like for quite a few years, music was my sole income. And then it became like, it was still taking it seriously and professionally, but it was more of a side hustle to the day gigs and the money that I was making, in marketing and, the business world versus the music world. And, there's no money in making albums anymore. And if you listen to one of the tunes on the My Guitar's My Only Friend album, there's a line in I'm on the Road Again where it's like, just give me the money, you can keep the fame. Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will chase the popularity in those things. And for me, it's like, I don't care. Like Wednesday night was great at the Haney, there's whatever, 100 people there. Like, I don't care if I'm in Maple Ridge playing for 50 or 100 people, or I'm at some big festival in Texas playing for 10,000 people. I've done those environments. And for my self gratification, it's like, as long as I'm around people that are enjoying it, I don't care where I am.
Wednesday was probably the most fun I think I've seen you have in all of your shows that I've attended.
In BC, yeah. Like when BC's a tough place to play.
Why?
It's hard to sell tickets, like pre-sales. It's
as a person in marketing for it, yeah.
And it's just a different it's like a different demographic, a different world. I've had some pretty big names that I've known that open for like world famous names
Hmm.
that say when I've come to Vancouver, you know, I play for 3,000 people and then there's 20,000 people at the show, 3 songs into the main artist in Vancouver. But when I play in other major cities, I got 70% of the stadium filled for my opening set.
Wow.
And they're waiting. It's packed and they're waiting for the main artist. But in
Mm.
BC, and I've heard this on a few occasions from people I know that have been on the open circuit for arena tours and stuff. You know, I can't speak from experience because I've never done it at that level, but I've talked to people, you know, that have, and it makes sense because, you know, mind you, I'm local here, but you know, I've talked to guys that are from out of town that come here and go like,
Yeah.
what can we do to try and sell tickets in BC? And I was like, yeah, everybody's like last minute.
Well, and even like with the Wolf, you know, I worked closely with the event coordinator there, and fantastic bands coming from outside of Maple Ridge are playing to an empty bar because
Mhm.
people just don't go unless it's their buddy up on the stage. You know, so I didn't know though that was scales up as well. That's interesting. Mm.
It does, and there's a couple different things. Like if well, you said you got into music like about a year ago for going to
Yeah.
shows, but the Yale Hotel closed down. I think it was 2011, and that place had a clientele. So the thing I see with bars nowadays is they'll hire me and they'll expect me to draw this big crowd out, which in some cases I can do. And in a lot of cases you can't, because especially being local and playing local, if you overexpose,
Hmm.
let's just say you've got 100 people that'll come to your shows. Well, if you play once that month, you could get all 100 people to come to that one show. But if you
Yeah.
play 3 times that month, you might only get 33 people that come to each of the shows.
Yeah.
Because not everybody, especially in today's market, not everybody can afford to go to every single show every single time.
That too.
Plus all the other people that they want to see too. You
Right.
know, so I don't even know what I was saying there, but yeah,
I don't
I don't
remember the
know.
question.
That's an issue. The clientele, that's what I was saying. See, I just go on rants here. But the clientele. So for instance, when I would play the Yale, they had and this is going to happen at the Blues Can next weekend in Calgary. Like they have a clientele. Like there's
Mhm.
going to be certain people that will go and buy tickets because I'm there,
Right.
but there's also certain people that will just go and pay a cover and go, we have no idea who this James guy is,
Right.
but we know it's going to be decent because this
Because
place brings in a certain quality of music.
right.
And that's because they have somebody booking that venue that keeps quality control. They understand the music business and the bar business. Most bar owners nowadays just understand the bar business. So
Yeah.
that's why a lot of times in BC in particular, and I may just be biased to this because I'm here more, they'll have a great band where people will go, that's like a world-class band or a real top level band. And then the next night they might go, that band was kind of thrown
Right.
together and didn't sounded shitty. So it's kind of like, imagine having a food in your pub that
Hmm.
was like keg on Friday and McDonald's on Saturday and then like
Inconsistent.
7-Eleven burritos on Sunday and then pub food on, like people would just go, I'm not going to eat there because I don't know what I'm going to get.
Yeah. I do recognize that because of Live Music Wednesday and what Linda puts into the shows that she brings in. People We're starting to see so many more people that are coming every week. They don't necessarily know who it is, exactly as you're saying, but they know that
It's going
Linda's
to be
booking
fun.
quality.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a good time and it's going to be
Yeah.
decent music, and you just go because it's going to be consistent. And
So do you see yourself touring again? I mean, I know you said you're going to Calgary, but I mean like touring. Do you ever see doing that again?
well, to tour again, it really just comes down to money. I
Yeah.
know so many people that are touring like crazy, but they don't have a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of. And I don't want to be disrespectful, and I wouldn't never drop names because they're slugging it out and doing shit that I could never do.
Yeah.
It's a hard road nowadays. Like I
Mhm.
didn't finish high school because I was making money playing music.
Right. Right.
The
Yeah.
money,
Making money
the
now.
money was decent. Like I can't make the money I made in the 90s today playing music. So I play music today because I want to, not because I have to. And
Right. Better
yes,
position to be in.
yeah, and yes, I try to keep a standard and you don't undercut, and there's this, like music business doesn't have unions to where they keep labor control. But to be frank, if you're a plumber, you know, you don't have a lineup of plumbers willing to come over to your house to like redo your bathroom for the fun of it.
Right.
Like that's a job, and where music for the professionals is a job and it's fun and they love it, so they, you know, work to live. They don't, or they live to work, not work to live, so
Mhm.
to speak.
Mhm.
So what you end up having is you have a bunch of this conflict between like the pros that are polished and then the guys that, jam in their garages that are all playing the same clubs,
Right.
because a bar will just say, well, you know, I'm not going to pay you $100 a guy or $500 a guy or whatever the band's asking for, because Bobby down the street is going to bring 8 guys in and they're just going to do it for drinks, and they're going to bring all their friends in. And the
Right.
bar owner doesn't give a shit how bad the music sounds because I had the bar packed, but
Friends
it's
came in.
not
They're
sustainable
drinking.
because, yeah, their friends came in, but where's your clientele? And if Bobby takes his friends across the street the next night, you're going to have an empty bar.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's circles back to the Yale has a clientele. The Blues Can does well. They have a clientele, because
Right.
if I go to Calgary and I play across the street from them, I'm not going to draw their entire crowd over. People go, we'll catch you next time you're at the Blues Can, because that's our watering hole. That's where we're going to go and hang out.
Right.
That's my place to go. And that's what Linda essentially is building at the Haney in many cases,
Yeah.
right? If somebody else does music somewhere on a Wednesday night, they're probably still going to go to the Haney, because even if they don't know that act, because they're in that routine, they're building a bit of a clientele for that
Mhm.
with consistency. And I feel like the music business lost all of that consistency when agents died out, because there used to
Okay.
be a day where there was
Oh,
like A, B, and C rooms, right? So back in the day, like for instance, you could say this is a B room circuit, and they'll pay $3,500 for the week, Monday to Saturday, for the band.
mhm.
And then this is an A room, and they'll pay $7,500 for the week for the band. But an
Okay.
agent will say, James, you're not at the A room level. Like you
Mhm.
don't the crowd, and you're not good enough.
Okay.
And in today's world where people have soft feelings, that's a hard pill to swallow. Back in those days, and
Right.
people hated agents because of it. They're like, fuck you too. Music is subjective. And there was that politicking that went on. But
Sure.
ultimately, growing up, I remember going through those different levels, and it was like, hey man, go practice for another 6 months and cut your chops and get good, because you're not there to
Right.
play those rooms. Maybe we'll feel you out and you can go open for somebody at this spot and see how the crowd reacts, and this, that, and the other. But the agents kind of kept the control. So an agent worked with the bar, and the bar was like, okay, the agent says, this is what I have to pay every week. And the agent gets the bands. There was none of this, well, we got music going, and, we paid James $3,000 for the week to come, but Bobby showed up and said he'll do it for $500 for the week. So we just saved ourselves $2,500. Let's get bought. Well, you could
Right.
do that with your cooks too. Where you could hire a great cook and say,
Yep.
hey, is my cook fill in the room to eat off the menu? And, let me get this other guy that, been slinging burgers at McDonald's for 6 months to be my head chef now. Like, like it's kind of
Mhm.
that's where I think people have, that's where I think music just went in the toilet essentially. I wish agents would come back.
Sad. Okay, I have let's change that a little bit. Now, I notice we're getting closer to our end time, so I've just got a couple more questions for you. The first
Okay.
one is, so you mentioned your dad as the person that really inspired you into the music world. How are you paying that forward?
To paying it forward, like to other people.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've been trying to have, there's a girl, Alexis, she's in LA now. I'm trying to get her. So if she does watch this, you better keep messaging me. No, and I've known her since she was 15 or 16, and I helped produce a couple of her singles early on when Tom had his studio and I had access there. And, I'm anybody I see that, is getting started or wants to get started, whether that be a venue or wherever, like I'm happy to help. It's one of the things of doing the podcast, to try and get people's
Yeah.
interest into music, because like you say, you start to appreciate and connect more with people when you know a bit more about them. And sometimes you just see a familiar face, you're like, wow, I never knew that about that person. And right now things on the podcast are a little bit more localized to the area, but I do have some tentacles that go a little bit, further there. But paying it forward, like wherever I can. Before COVID hit, I only ever played in Maple Ridge at Kingfishers, because myself and Jack Lavin helped get live music going there probably close to 20 years ago. And for the overexposure thing, it was like, okay, well, to help build this venue and their music, I'm not going to play anywhere else, because if I'm playing there once or twice a month, the people aren't going to show up there if I'm playing other places in the same community. So people that were like, oh, when are you playing at Kingfishers? When are you playing at Kingfishers? When are you playing at Kingfishers? I don't do that post COVID now.
Right.
The dynamics have changed, which is why, the Anavets, when they, oh, we didn't think you'd be interested in playing here, probably because just in the back of their minds, it's like, I've turned down like 99.9% of the gigs I've ever been offered in the last 15 years
Right.
in this area, just simply because of overexposure. I try to be sensitive to that, because,
Saturation.
yeah, for one, I don't really want to play every week anyway, let alone play in the same town every week, just
So
because people will get bored, like I don't know
yeah,
5,000 songs that, like I can play a different song every night for 7 weeks before I repeat one. Like there's no artist, like you take a major artist and, unless they have residencies in Vegas, because the demographic in Vegas turns around every 3 days.
right.
If you did a residency in Vancouver and said, oh, BB King's going to play the Orpheum 5 nights a week for the next 4 years, like the place would be empty after the first month or two, probably, because people would be like, yeah, I've been there. And he's, you know what I mean? At some point, that's why bands travel from town to town, right?
Mhm. So the paying it forward thing, I actually, that one came to mind for me. That question came to mind for me at the Dudney. You were doing the Sunday Jam out there, and there was a kid, I don't know, he was like 21, 22, had kind of long brown shaggy hair, got up on stage, and I remember he started playing and you turned and looked at him. You're like, look at this guy, and just hyped him right up. And I thought, dude, that's cool. That's so
Yeah.
cool.
And that's what it's about. Guitar players, especially, they can get so competitive with each other.
Right.
And for me, when I see another guy and they are maybe younger and new to it, it's, all the older guys, they gave me that courtesy. They were like, hey, go, play, and they were there for advice on what to do, what not to do, all that stuff. And, when I see younger guys, it's like, give them the opportunity. I don't need to take a solo in the song. I solo forever. You just keep going.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a situation like Randy on your guitar on Wednesday. I've never
That
seen a
happens.
guitarist let that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. And I guess for people listening that weren't there or didn't see any videos on Facebook, that's common, right? I've like some of the old blues guys will do that. And I know I've known Randy for years and he
Yeah,
plays. So it's like he gets out there and it's like, sure, take the guitar or go,
that was so fun.
you know,
Okay,
you know what you're
last
doing.
question. If you win the lottery tomorrow and decide you're never coming back to the music world, how do you want people to remember you?
Oh, Jesus, really?
Yep.
Just remember watching my ass go off into the sunset with my backpack and my hunting rifle.
Oh.
And don't worry if I ever come back. No, I don't know, you know, like how does anybody want to remember anybody, right? Remember the good times, the bad times, you know, music. It's like I don't even know. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that
You
one.
don't even know how to answer
I
that.
have
You're
no
adorable.
idea. I have I have no idea.
Okay.
However
See,
they want to remember me.
that's one of the things that I think I really appreciate about you is that, like, when I found your awards page and I was like, holy crap, like the word Juno is on here multiple times, and you're really humble. You're not braggadocious, and
Braggadocious, is that a word?
braggadocious. Yes, I think so.
I gotta look
I
that
might have
up.
made it up. It's hard to say.
If you made that up, that's genius.
I'm gonna Google it as
Braggadocious.
soon as we hang up.
We should Google it right now. I'm gonna Google it
Right?
here because it doesn't matter. We're on our own clock. We don't have to like hold on a sec. Google, let's see. Braggadocious. No, actually, I'm gonna see what AI says about this one. Let's look this up. Let's ask it. Is braggadocious, I don't even know how to spell that. Braggadocious a real word? Let's see what
is.
AI says. Okay, it's coming up. Braggadocious is not officially recognized word in most dictionaries. Okay.
It's in the Oxford.
But it is a playful, informal term derived from the word braggadocio. Am I saying that right?
I don't
It
know.
refers to boastful and arrogant behavior. Wait a minute. Do I need to be offended by this term?
No. I said you're not braggadocious. Jeez.
It's described. Hold on. Is often used to describe someone who is boastful in a light-hearted or exaggerated way. It gained popularity in American slang, but remains creative usage rather than a standard word. I'm confused whether or not I should be offended or not by
Should
this.
not
Hold
be
on a second.
offended. I
I'm
said
just
you
kidding.
are not
I'm
braggadocious.
just. Oh, I'm not braggadocious. Sorry,
Not
I missed.
braggadocious. You don't
misheard.
listen, but you're
I
not
misheard you.
braggadocious.
Yeah, I'm hearing you, but I'm not listening to you.
Right? Oh, that's too funny. So,
yeah. Well, what other questions do you have for me?
well, the only other questions I really had were things about, like, so one of the things that I would do the Marge growl a lot. One of the things that I'm exploring about myself is the fact, like, why have I not really been involved in music? Why do I not listen to music? Like, if I'm in my car, I listen to talk radio or I listen to a lot of podcasts. And when I look back on the songs that I did listen to in my teenage years, I don't know any verses. I only know the choruses. And so, trying to figure out why that is. And I think I've come to the conclusion that it's because it evokes too much emotion in me, which is kind of weird. So I had questions like, how old were you the first time a song felt like you could have written it?
I was today years old.
Okay. And what song brings a lump to your throat to this day?
Oh, honestly, I don't know, because I'm very much like you in the way that I don't listen to music anymore. And
What?
I don't practice.
Okay.
And when I'm driving my car, I'm listening to the news stations too.
Really?
Yeah, like no word of a lie. I might listen to like some tunes when I have a shower, and that's
Mm,
about it, right?
interesting.
I don't really listen to. Yeah, I don't listen to music much. I don't
Mm.
practice. I don't. I might grab a guitar, like I have a acoustic that sits around the house, and I might grab it for like 15 seconds and play something, and then go, "Ow, my fingers hurt," and I put it back down.
Really? I would have thought that your
Yeah,
life like revolved around
no,
music.
not at all.
Interesting.
It used to, and I feel like playing music today is kind of like riding a bike. When I
Mm,
was a kid, I had no life. Like I didn't go to parties. I didn't start drinking till I was 34 after my dad died. I never had a drink until then.
really?
Yeah, it was well, I'm gonna blame Tom Lavin on this one
Oh,
because
really?
because
Why?
he used to always have a drink with my dad at the shows, and then after my dad passed, it was like, well, let's have a toast to your dad. A drink. My first drink was like some single malt thing. I think we were sitting at the Billy Bishop in Kitsilano, and Tom would go out there and play piano on the piano, and man, I was like, I had a sip of this stuff, and I was like, holy shit! I was like, I could start my car with this stuff. Pour it in the carburetor and get it going. It was crazy. And then yeah, you kind of acquire a taste after a while and
Why
just
did you
become a.
not drink?
I
Especially
didn't.
being having been raised in bars, or was that why you didn't
Well,
drink?
because I'd seen a lot of crazy shit. Like I
Mm,
remember playing a place, I think it was called the Piccadilly Pub, and I went and had a piss before a set, and some guy like fell over in the stall next to me, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's another drunk motherfucker, right? And 2 songs in, the paramedics come in, guy died, OD'd in the bathroom. So a lot of the old timers, they were really good. Like, and when I was so from 13 to 19, I couldn't even sit in the bar area. I had to,
right.
when I played, like I played the Wild Duck or Barnet stripper clubs, I had to sit in the stripper room, or I had to sit in
Mm,
like the lobby or the kitchen or outside
mhm.
and wait until it's my turn to play. And then I could walk through the bar to the stage, but I
Yeah.
could never hang out in the bar. And all my dad always said, if you're going to drink, you're going to drink. And if you're going to drink, don't be like that guy. Be like that
Right.
guy. Right. And I never had that rebellion like a lot of my friends did, where it
No.
was like, oh, we're going to go boot and we're going to sit in the school forest and,
Yeah.
drink beers and get all fucked up.
Right.
It was just like, I don't care. Like if I really wanted to drink something, my dad probably would have bought me a 6-pack if I
Right.
asked him. Or somebody in a bar. But a lot of the guys, like I seen guys doing blow and shooting heroin, like I seen it all. And all of
Mm,
them are like, they would have never gave it to me if I was like, hey, let me try that. They'd be like,
right.
don't you ever fucking do this stuff. Like, I'll kill you if you do this. Don't end up
Yeah.
like me. So I saw the bad side of it, and I never ever
Mm.
did. Plus I wanted my liver to grow really good so that when I did start drinking, it was okay. Right. So that's why I don't get hangovers anymore. But
Ah.
yeah, so I never, I never really,
Mm.
I never really got like and that's why you said the other night, you go, first time I saw you, you like walked in 5 minutes before you played,
Yeah.
you plugged in, you played, and then you were gone, right? And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I did that for a lot in my life because I didn't want to get caught up in the
Yeah.
lifestyle. Now I know all you degenerates in Maple Ridge that keep me
Sober,
drinking.
not a
I
degenerate.
know you're the sober one, but guys like Don Johnson.
That guy. That
not the
guy.
not and for all the
Not
listeners, not the
Miami
Miami
Vice.
Vice Don Johnson, the real
Much
Don
funnier.
Johnson,
Yeah.
the much
Much
funnier
funnier.
Don Johnson. Oh yeah, I know.
This is the Don Johnson you really want to know.
Yeah, absolutely, you do.
He cracks me
Yeah,
up.
so I don't know. My life hasn't been too interesting, but yeah, people. I talked about this with JDub, where a lot of people just get this perception, right? Because they just see you on stage playing
Yeah.
music, you did albums, you did this, and it's just like, you know, I don't know. We're all just people at the end of the day.
Put her pants on one leg at a time, as they say. Yeah,
Exactly.
true enough. So you're a family man who
Yeah.
does marketing and music on the side.
Yeah, nowadays, yeah, it's music on the side. Like I don't really pick up the phone and try and pound the ground to get gigs. I have good relationships I've made over the years. So, club in Calgary, every now and then they reach out and go, "Hey, how are things going? We want to get you back. What does your calendar look like? Oh, we'll do this date here." It's just like a lot of casual conversations, right? It's the same thing with Linda. I see her quite a bit at things, and she'll
Mm,
say, "Hey, do you want to do this date at the hey, okay, sure, right?" And it's same thing because I use Greg on drums and he runs the jam at the Dudney. So, he'll call me every now and then, out of sight, out of mind. But yeah, I don't get on the blower and pound the ground. And as for like getting back to touring on a regular basis, like I would never be opposed to it because my job affords me the opportunity to, work. Reason I got into computers was, back in the 90s, Tom Lavin he had a AxiaNet company, and long before like Shaw and Telus, and he was into that, very savvy in the business realm of things. So I knew about websites and all that stuff like before most people ever did because of that. And when I toured, I was touring with guys 20, 30 years older than me. So, at 19, 20 years old, touring with 40 and 50-year-olds,
right.
I just sat in hotel rooms all day long. People are like, "Oh, wow, you toured all these places. That's great." I got to see the interstates, airports, and hotel rooms.
Gas stations.
And I went to Mount Rushmore a couple times, like, and gas stations, I didn't, you don't really get to do much more than that, right? It's not what people think it is. But if you pay me enough, I'll go anywhere,
Fair. What's
right?
the what's what's the absolute like never again that was absolutely horrific road story? And you don't have to name names, but is there a story you have of that? Oh God, it was so bad.
Oh, there's so many.
Is there really?
There is. Yeah. Oh man. Um,
I didn't know it was a loaded question.
yeah, like they were so bad that when I look back at them, they were so good. But at
Those
the
are the
time,
best.
I
Yeah.
absolutely hated it. Well, Calgary, I love playing Calgary now, and I haven't played Edmonton in years since the Juno tour I did, going to the
Mhm.
Junos. But in Calgary, there's a place called the King Eddie, and it's like redone now, kind of like the Yale is. So it's like fancy pants, oh, which fork do I use? It's like much nicer. Back in the
Right.
day, it was a complete shithole, right? Like it was the only place in the entire North America, parts of Europe I'd ever been where I took my own cleaning supplies and bed sheets. It was that bad.
Oh, you talked about that on one of your
Yeah.
podcasts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't
It
there
was,
like a hole in the floor that looked down at the bar?
I think that was actually Saskatoon, but yeah,
Oh, was that a
it was
different
bad.
one?
No, I remember killing a cockroach in the bathroom at the King Eddie and then going downstairs and playing for 4 hours and coming back. And there was like 200 cockroaches in my bathroom. Like
That's
they
a,
just come to eat the cockroach I killed or something, little cannibals.
that's. I'm sure there's horror movies where that's the
Oh,
plot
I
line.
I would have string and I would tie it from one room to the other, like one side of the room to the other, and I'd hang all my clothes on the string
Oh, smart.
because
Gross.
like it was like the Roach Motel. It was absolutely disgusting. And like I said in the other podcast, I signed my name and dated it so many times that somebody actually wrote and was like, "James, find yourself a girl so you don't have to stay here anymore." It was like 3 or 4 times a year I played there for like 5 years straight. To the point, at one point, when I got my own band after leaving Russell, I went there in 2001, 2 or 3, somewhere around there. I'd bought this old 75, like Winnebago, walk in the cab drive, like motorhome, right? And
Mhm.
we all slept in that, parked out in there. And I remember we came out and I had this taser gun that I'd always carry around with me. And we come out and I got a pillow in my hand. It's like 2 a.m. and all these young yuppies are walking down from the country bar. And I walk out with Winfred Ballard, right? And he's my brother from another mother. He's from Greenwood, Mississippi. And, he got his like fro going, black as black guy, right? And me and him walk out and I got a pillow in one hand. And these guys are like across the street. They're like, "You fucking crackheads. Cause we're walking into the alley to go sleep in this beat up motorhome. right? Because
Right.
the place is such a dump, right? And then it was like, zzz, 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 doing this to the guys. They're like, "Oh, okay."
That's
Yeah.
brutal.
Oh, yeah.
That's
Yeah, but I
brutal.
don't know. There's not much I totally hate. There was a lot of
Must have
highs
been
and lows,
lonely
I
on the
guess.
road, though. I mean, if your significant other,
It is.
do you
It's hard.
travel with significant others on the road?
Well, back in those days, the significant others didn't last too long because you didn't
Oh,
have video calls and stuff. Like in those days, you had to go buy a $50 calling card and find a payphone. Nowadays, people are like, "What's a payphone?"
yeah.
I remember my older daughters. They said years ago they were like, "When can I get a phone?" I said, "Well, when you can afford to buy one." "Well, how old were you when you got a phone?" I said, "I was 19." They're like, "Why were you so old?" I said,
You
"Well,
didn't
because
exist
when I
yet.
was fucking 10 years old, we didn't have phones." And then the other one's like, "Dad was born in the 19s, right? You know that." Like,
Yep.
shit. Now they're like, in university and shit. But yeah, no, it was good times. I learned a lot on the road. Again, it's all like the street smart side of
Yeah.
things. Like that's how
Yeah.
I learned. Like I could read books for days, but show me how to do it in 5 minutes and I'll figure it out. Right. And
Yeah.
and
Same. I'm a high school dropout. I got pregnant. That ends things. Um, but it's there's intelligence, and then there's wisdom from life, which I think there's more value in that, anyways.
yeah, and music's kind of the same way. Like going back to when I was talking about music schools and that one school saying I'd never be a guitar player. It was just
Mhm.
the way you're teaching somebody doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So the second guitar teacher I
Totally.
had, he was able to pivot and brilliant enough to say, "Hey, this type of person needs to learn this way. This type of person learns this way."
I wish more
And
people understood that.
yeah, and that worked really well for me because I don't really like I know the keys I play in and I know like the root thing of chords. Like I could say, "Oh, this
Mhm.
is an A chord or a 7 chord or a 9 chord or a minor chord." Like that's like my level of understanding. I get guitar players all the time and they'll say on a set break, like, "Hey, what was that song you did?" And, we'll establish what song it was. "Oh, you played this chord. Like, what was that?" "It was like some sort of minor 7 suspended 13 augmented." And I'm like, "What? Huh? Speak
Oh man,
English."
I
No
did
fucking
this.
idea what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm like this. And they're like, "Oh, fuck, that's fucking cool." I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I play it. And if it's wrong, I'll play it twice and just tell everyone it's my jazz note. And then I'll never do it again. And then like, it's just all by ear, right? So if I hear something and or somebody can show me, then boom, I got it. I'll retain it.
When
And
you're on stage and like in between singing when you're riffing, is that all just freestyle? Like is any of that
it's made up.
it just made up in the moment?
Yeah, there's like, I look at it like conversation, right? Like you can have a conversation with somebody and I know all the words in the English language, but how am I going to put them together and in what context, right? Am I going to put them together in a way that I'm speaking formally or I'm speaking casually or
Mhm.
humorous? So it's like I look at the guitar and I go, here's these boxes of notes that I know I'm in this key. So like these things will work for me.
Mhm.
And is this a song that is like sad and mellow or is it happy and exciting or is it, so you'll just give it that kind of
That's
energy
cool.
and notes. Cause it's like every guitar player knows all the same notes. Like I hear guitar players all the time or bass players or sax players or harp players. You can hear somebody and go, yeah, they're playing all the right notes, but it didn't really do anything for me. Didn't touch
Right.
me. Didn't
Yeah.
feel it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's the same thing. Like you can have a conversation with somebody and go, yeah. Then you can have a conversation and go, fuck, that was a good conversation.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
the way the person phrased their words, the placement of their words.
Hmm.
and for me, it's, like I'll be like, hey, there's what they call a head to a song. There's like a melody that makes it that song. Like when you sing
Okay.
certain words, you sing the words, but you might not, what they call phrasing, phrase it the same every time, right? If that makes any sense.
Not to
Um
me, but I'm not a
yeah,
music.
like, yeah, but like for instance, like a song might go 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And you might phrase it a different time, one time and go 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like
Okay.
you gave somebody,
So you
and
can make it maybe like sound same words, same tune, a little cheekier, or same sound, same tune, same words,
yeah,
a little.
like
Okay.
I guess the best way for a non-musician to like know what I'm saying here would be go listen to a song that from a band you like, any band, and
Hmm.
listen to their studio recorded version of that. And then take that version and go find a live video on YouTube or something of that.
Okay, your music, your albums, some of them I've heard you, like I first heard it on stage. I see you, and I listened to it on the album, and I'm like, that sounds totally different. Totally different. I prefer the
Yeah.
live. I gotta say,
Yeah.
I
Well,
definitely prefer the
well,
live.
yeah, live's a little more polished, and there's a different energy that's there that's
It's
really
the
hard to
energy.
capture. That's really
It's
hard to
definitely
capture.
the energy.
Yeah,
And
for
I never
sure.
understood that, like back when I never understood that why people liked, and it's weird because people like, oh, this album is a live album. It's so much better. I hated live albums. I just didn't get why because it wasn't, I don't know, polished enough,
Yeah.
maybe. And then which is so interesting why now decades later I'm
It's
older and
different.
different. Yeah. Yeah, and
Well,
now like with your music I way prefer the live, but it's probably the energy in the room versus, I
yeah,
don't
like
know.
when you're in the room, it's like when you're listening to an album, 100% of your concentration is coming from your ears. When you're in a room, I always say like maybe 50% of your energy is when you're watching a band, you're watching. So
Mhm.
half of your brain
Mhm.
is like paying attention to visual aspects of what's happening on stage and off stage and around and people watching. And
Mhm.
then the other half is maybe listening to the band and other conversations that are going on. When you're listening to an album in a car, 100%, there's no hiding at that point, right? And then there's two different types of music. There's the music where people will always say, love the album, but they're way better live. Then
Mhm.
and that's because when that situation arises, it's like those are good musicians, right? Because they're able to do what the album does and better. Then you've got
Oh,
these more fabricated artists where it's like, oh man, their live show was terrible, but I love their album. Well, it's because
ooh, Alan
those
Jackson.
people, I find a little bit more fabricated.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you
Oh,
if
that's
you're relying,
interesting.
yeah, if you rely on technology to prop you up on an album, what are you going to do
Right.
live? Unless you play to a backing track. But and they tried to do that when, I always say video killed the radio star. Remember seeing an interview with Jimmy Vaughn. He said, man, as soon as MTV came out, we had to start wearing suits and stop wearing jeans and t-shirts because we were just loitering around the stage, because in those days, pre 79, and this is way before my time, but, interviews I've seen and stuff, it seemed like, you were a radio star. Like even in one of the Chuck Berry movies, they didn't even realize he was black, right? They were like, oh, hey, wait a minute, Chuck Berry is a white country singer. And it was like, no, I'm Chuck Berry. Like, well, you can't come in here, right? It like they just liked the music. They didn't really know what to see. And then it wasn't until like MTV, and then everything shifted. It became more about your visuals. Like I see it with my kids, right? How was the concert? Oh, it was great. This big car came up on stage and lights went. I'm like, oh, great. How was the music?
Yeah.
How the music
Yeah.
sound? It's all about, oh, they did like a different outfit change in every song. And, it's more of a theatrical play than it is about music. And I've always rebelled against that because people have been like, oh, you got to put on a show and stuff. I'm like, fuck that. I want to be like Bryan Adams and Bruce Springsteen and stand there in jeans and a t-shirt and play. And if you don't like what you hear, then fucking leave. Right. I don't care.
And I'll say Alan Jackson. I was into country for the longest time. Back in the 90s. And, I went to a Garth Brooks concert, the most fun concert I've ever been to. Like I've ever been to. Then, and Alan Jackson, I was in love with Alan Jackson. Went to his concert. He stood in one spot on the stage, tapping his toe, playing his guitar. And it was the most boring fucking concert I've ever been to.
See, I love that. Just play.
Hated it.
Just play, man. Just play. Yeah, there's a bit of a happy medium between.
Yeah.
It's got to be about music, but you got to have something for people to enjoy watching wise too. But
maybe that's my love of dancing, though, because again, the album versus live, like you're talking about watching the show. But there's also feeling the show on the dance floor is just ups it exponentially. Maybe because Garth, we were all out of our seats. The whole stadium was dancing and screaming, and it was just energy. And Alan's, everybody was sitting there tapping their toes.
Serving NyQuil in the beers.
Maybe that's
no. Yeah, of course. It could be for sure. And I've played some of those shows, and you play the theaters where everybody has to remain seated, and they can only have their drinks on the set breaks, and it's like,
Right.
I like to play that's why rather than playing a big concert hall like the Orpheum where you got 5,000 people sitting in a seat watching you, I'd rather play a 100-seat bar where 50 people get on the dance floor completely shit-faced and have a good time. Like,
I imagine the energy for the band, having that energy feed back to you must be pretty incredible.
Yeah, and it feeds back more in smaller venues than it does larger venues because there's just a disconnect, especially like, the times I played the Commodore, there's like 1,200 people, but I can only see the first 2 rows.
Oh, okay.
You can't see anybody else.
Right.
But there's there and it's noisy and stuff, and energy can get big. But yeah, sometimes like if you got a crowd that's doesn't seem into it or energetic, you play off that. It's
chair.
There's your dog.
Look at you, big boy. He's terrified of my chair.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is Skeeter. He's a cranky old man that yells at everybody on his lawn. Do you have any pets?
Got a cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he can think he's a dog at times and be crazy. I got a cut on my arm right now from him. We always fight.
I have a cat too. I like cats.
Yeah. What kind of cat?
A fat black little bitch. Here she is. Come here. This is Pepper.
Oh, green eyes.
Yeah. She's a terrible being. She's a terrible cat, aren't you? Yes. I like to torture the cat. Oh, yeah. So what are you doing this week? Oh, I know you're doing Saturday, but doing anything exciting with your weekend?
No, I'm
Are you a homebody for the most part?
I am a homebody. Yeah. Right now is like I call silly season. It's election time, so I usually have I do some work in the political volunteering work and stuff in the political arena, helping a few different campaigns out with their marketing stuff, and they're a little disconnected from that world, so I help connect them a bit and gets a little demanding, but that'll come to an end here, I guess, next week when the elections and stuff are done with. So yeah, for me tomorrow, I got a little election thing to go on, and then playing the 3 to 7 show there, and then back to work, enjoy Thanksgiving with the family, and head off to Calgary next week for some shows and work. And yeah, nothing. I don't really live an exciting life,
No.
other than some music stuff. Right. But yeah, I don't, yeah, it's not all the hype that people might think it is. It's quite boring.
Elton John lied. He makes it look all glam.
Yeah. Well, you know, those old schoolers are crazy. You know, I remember seeing a thing with what's his name, Joe Walsh, and he was talking about AI, and he's like, they asked him about AI. He goes, I'll worry about AI when AI can trash a hotel room and throw a TV off the 3rd story into a pool. I said, well, you know, AI might not be too far off from that. You know, there's some robot coming in. I'm Joe Walsh.
Well, Elon Musk is that under?
Yeah, he'll figure it out.
Right?
He'll have the next big hit band.
Either him or the Japanese. We'll see who gets there first.
Yeah. Who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I don't know what else to tell you.
I don't know what else to ask you.
Well, then I guess we're done.
Wraps it up.
That about wraps it up. Yeah. I guess we're good.
Okay. Well, thank you for humoring me.
Yeah, no problem.
Yay. All right.
Yeah. And how do people find out about you? Because they might be like, who the hell's this?
Oh, no. I don't think.
Yeah.
The only place I'm anywhere famous is in the vegan community.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. Well, maybe we'll get we'll just have to edit out my part about hunting, but
Right.
we will.
Yeah. No, I do a lot of volunteer stuff around the community with the vegans, and then I do some marketing for. Right, I was the online marketing manager for the Wolf Bar for 10 years. I put them on the map on Facebook. I'm currently doing the volunteer marketing for Anavets. There's a local band that's about to make a comeback that I cannot name yet, that I also run their Facebook marketing page. And then what else do I do? I do for the Haney, I do Linda's marketing for the Live Music Wednesday, which is every Wednesday night from 6 till 8 at the Haney in Maple Ridge, and it's quality acts. It's a 2-hour bite where you can get out and dance your face off and be home in time to go to bed and get up for work in the morning. It's my favorite part of it.
Yeah.
It's not my thing. It is my friend Linda's, so it is not mine, but there you go.
That's good. Well, we'll get some links that we can put up so people can come follow you and in all the music stuff you're doing.
Okay, that yeah.
And if they happen to be vegan, you guys can share some recipes or something.
Right? They can join my group, the Ridge Meadows Vegan and Plant-Based. If you have any dietary restrictions and you need to know where to find stuff locally, that's what it's all about. That's
great. Well, we will share that too then.
Don't have to.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks for doing this, and this will hopefully put to rest some of those people that were like, you need to do a podcast. So now I'll send them this one. Yeah. Now it's been done. I don't want to hear it again. Okay.
All right. Awesome. Have a good weekend.
Okay,
see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye.